3, 2, 1. John Lee Dumas, thank you for coming on, sir. But to answer your question, if you can't tell, this is how I do the podcast. I know I only got you for 18 minutes. I'm not a military veteran. I just like my flag, and I guess I like the short haircut. I always get asked that. They're like, military veteran? I'm like, no, not at all.
You got the look. You got the buzz cut. You're wearing the fatigue green.
I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. But the reality is no, I've shot a gun like 5 times. But I was reading your bio, man, and your story, and I do, in like the most eye-rollingly cheesy way, I do kind of see you as like where I want to be, in that I got into medical school in 2013. I decided not to go. I got into pharmacy school, decided not to go.
Oh, thank God.
And yeah, right after I graduated, I lost my oldest sibling to suicide, and I just went nuts for like 3 years. Got pretty suicidal myself and moved home. And a lot of unimportant stuff in between. Started this podcast in December 2019, and in the last couple of months or so, it's slowly started to make money. But both my uncles were physicians, and they both told me if I was smart enough to get into medical school, I was smart enough to make more money doing less work.
Yes,
and
smart men.
And reading your story, I mean, yours kind of sounds like mine on steroids. Like in the military for 8 years, like. Tried law school, wasn't for you. Tried corporate finance, wasn't for you. Just said screw it, and moved to paradise and have a podcast and create your own. So what? I mean, I know this is like probably like the most stereotypical softball question, but like, how do you do it? What do I need to do?
Well, first, let me ask you this question: how old are you?
I'm 30.
Okay. So just, what I'm a big believer in, by the way, is never comparing yourself to anybody else who's further along in their journey, because it will only lead to despair. Yeah. The only person, and this is not just for you, by the way, this is just a general thing I want your listeners to comprehend, is the only person you ever should be comparing yourself to is you yesterday. If you're winning that comparison, you are winning at life. And brother, I was completely lost and clueless and just had nothing but failures behind me when I was 32 years old. So I was 2 years older than you, still clueless, still trying to figure stuff out after dealing with depression and PTSD for my 13 months of tour of duty in Iraq. Yeah. So I dealt with all that stuff as well. And I was still clueless at 32. And even if I was 42 or 62, like the ages doesn't even matter anyways. What matters is like, compare yourself to you yesterday. And if there's anybody that is like you, which you and I are similar in enough ways, just like, I'm similar to other people in enough ways, who has been there and done that and succeeded, you can too. Like if I can do it, you can do it. And if I can do it, anybody listening and watching can do it, whatever their version of that quote unquote uncommon success is. And listen, I mean, we can sit here and rap all day about, basically like what the next step is for you. Sure. And the reality is, as you know, we only have 15 minutes here together. But, that's one reason why I sat down in my little quarantine of 2020 and I busted my little booty and I wrote my first traditionally published book, because this book, it's exactly what you need. It's exactly what your listeners need to find your version of uncommon success. If you truly want financial freedom and fulfillment, I have crafted a 17-step roadmap to just that. And this isn't just from my story. I mean, my story plays a role in this. Of course, I've been running a multi-million-dollar business for 8 years in a row now in the foreseeable future. I mean, that's not stopping anytime soon. But this is really being pulled from the 3,000 interviews I've now done on Entrepreneurs on Fire. Yeah. The 100 million listens this show has gathered to over 1.4 million listens every single month. As you know, I'm sure you've scoured it before. I publish our monthly income reports on our website. 89 months in a row, we've published an income report. Every one of those months, we've netted. That means we've put in our pocket over $100,000 in pure profits. 89 months in a row. And it's not by mistake, by the way. Yeah. And, by the way, and that wasn't overnight, by the way. Yeah. My first couple of years were tough, and I was happy to be scraping, a couple $1,000s a year, a month doing this and doing that. And I'm sure I was in a, similar financial situation as you are right now at your similar stage, back launching in the end of 2019. So listen, it's a process. Something will click. Will this put that journey on steroids? Absolutely. This is my book. This is everything that works in my life and the 3,000 entrepreneurs that I interviewed, what worked in their life. And not to mention the specifically 17 all-star entrepreneurs that I brought into this book to contribute to it. The Russell Brunsons, Ramit Sethi's, Amy Porterfield, Pat Flynn, you name them, they're in this book for specific reasons because I knew they were the best person to talk about that specific step. And that's what this book is. It's 17 steps, a 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. And you start at step 1, you end at step 17, and your business will be bulletproof.
Hell yeah. Have and I'll put that in the description, sticking in the top comment for everybody listening. Have you ever, he passed away in, I think, 2019. Have you ever read any Ram Dass? Richard Alpert, he's like 92. He got fired from Harvard in the 60s. He was like best friends with Timothy Leary, the Harvard LSD experiments. He was a super successful guy, young entrepreneur, had his own plane, boats, island, all that stuff, and tried LSD and was like, this isn't, this earthly life isn't for me. And he went to like the Himalayas and basically got lost with some like Buddhists for like 20 years and just like came back and just, but the whole point of that is he said that when he met a guy who became his guru, I think it was Maharaji, he said being around him was a lot like being around like a campfire. He was like, you didn't affect the campfire. It was going to be burning with or without you. And if you got closer to it, it was, you could feel the warmth. A lot like the sun, whether there's clouds or not, whether you're indoors or not, the sun's still shining. And I've had that experience with a couple people, and I can say that you're one of them. Even just talking to you for 5 minutes now, there's definitely just like, it's like what Steve Jobs' closest co-worker said was around him he had what was it, the
reality distortion
field, or anything is possible in his vicinity. And I get that feeling from you. I got it from Dr. Eben Alexander, the author of Proof of Heaven. For you, laying that whole thing out, because I imagine it can only at least in my experiences, it only happens with people that are quote unquote, it's all relative, sort of above, where you are. You want to get closer to them. Out of the 3,000 people you interviewed, who are those for you?
So you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's how I end every single one of my podcast episodes, because it's frankly the truth. And that's why back in 2012, I joined a podcast mastermind to up my average. That's why I started interviewing people to up my average. Like right now, you and I hanging out, let's be honest, I'm upping your average right now.
Yeah.
I just said it's a fact.
Yeah.
That's what I look for. I'm like, who can up my average? And I'm always looking to engage and interact with those people. So a great example is last year, I hosted a mastermind down here for like straight A ballers. I mean, I had people that were some of the top A-level players on my podcast over the past 9 years come to my home for 3 days, and we just masterminded, and I surrounded myself with them. I'll hold, virtual little private events where we're just getting together on a Zoom call and we're just talking. We're just sharing like one tip, one takeaway. Like I'm always looking to do that, which is why I continue doing my show. I've done 3,000 episodes now. I keep cranking these puppies out because I keep meeting new amazing people that are upping my level, upping my game, because they're entrepreneurs on fire. I mean, every single one of these people is absolutely crushing it in their specific area of expertise. And that's how I continue to stay relevant. That's how I continue to stay razor sharp, laser focused, cutting edge, by surrounding myself with those people. And it's exactly what you're doing right now with your show. I mean, you've been doing this now since December or late 2019. I mean, you are surrounding yourself with the right people.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's, so I guess kind of the inverse question, and there's always fun in self-deprecation. So if I'm definitely elevating myself being around you, what do you do when you have to be around people like me? Or let's say just, in general, you got like a mean person in your life. You have to cut them out, right? They are a cancer. They're a weed. And
if they're a mean person and they're cut out of my life, I don't have time for that. But if there's somebody like you who's hungry, who's, coming up in the world, who's got a lot to learn, but is also has different perspectives from me, I can learn from you. There's definitely things I can and learn from people that are at your stage in life all the time. time because I can't stay on top of everything. So I'm always ears open, eyes open, having these conversations. Plus, what am I doing right now? I'm honing my skills. Every time I do an interview like this where you're asking me questions, I'm getting better with my answers. I'm honing my skills. I'm sharpening my sword. And that's one thing that, a great Abraham Lincoln quote, that I'm sure was attributed to like 15 other people, but it was like, if you had an hour to cut down a cherry tree, like what would you do? He's like, I spend the first 15 minutes sharpening my blade because that's what you need is a sharp blade. So right now I am totally sharpening my blade. So if one person watches this, 1,000 people watch this, or 100,000 people watch this is totally worth my time because I'm hanging out with a cool person, sharing my knowledge, my value, and I'm getting better at sharing my knowledge and my value. I'm honing my skills. I am crafting. I'm honing my craft. I'm improving at what it is that I do. Like, frankly, a lot of people in my podcasting community, Podcasters Paradise, say, John, how do I get bigger guests? Like, how do I grow my audience? And I'm like, I hate to break this to you, but your podcast sucks. And so you're not going to get better guests. You're not going to grow your audience because people are going to listen to this podcast and it sucks. But I got something to share with you. My podcast used to suck. It really did. But I put in the reps. I did it every single day for 5.5 years in a row. And I got a little bit better every single time. Now within 3,000 episodes. Like, of course I'm a little better than when I started. So what are you doing to put in the reps? Like, I'll ask them that question. They'll be like, well, I've done 3 interviews. And I'm like, well, how many practice interviews have you done? How many times have you actually practiced your craft to get better? Yeah. And, there's people that gave me a chance, by the way, like Pat Flynn was one of my first few episodes. Yeah. And he didn't know if anybody was listening. In fact, nobody was because it was pre-launch. He came on my show. And since his podcast on my show has gotten hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of listens. So it's been a big win for him. Yeah. And who knows, who the next JLD is in my world. Yeah. Maybe you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah. It's you're right. And that's one that I think that was like my mistake early on was I was like, I gotta get the first. Right, I got to get the first big podcast. But it made me think of being pre-med. You don't just jack your average up to like a 4.0 and you're like, I just got to get an A on this test. And it's like, no, you got to get A's on every test and every course and every semester. And as it goes, the average slowly comes up. I found that with episode 95. I had on Mike Durant, the quote-unquote pilot that was shot down in Mogadishu. That the whole movie Black Hawk Down is about.
Yeah.
And I had him on him. I was like, I remember I finished it and I started uploading and I was like, I made it. I'm there. I did it. And, I got like 5 more subscribers. And I was like, what the hell? And then like,
that's not always the answer. That guy would not have, whatever. Yeah.
And that kept happening. I had on a brigadier general from Obama's National Security Council. I had on Charlie Duke, the 10th man to walk on the moon. And every time I'd have someone on that, I'd be like, I did it. I made it.
Getting some really unique and cool guests. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. It's I can put you in contact with any of them if you'd like.
Yeah, listen, it's weird. It's like the weirdest thing is going to click and it's going to take off, and then people are going to come back and listen to your back catalog and they're going to love it. And so it's just like when. It's not if. It's when is it going to happen? And it's going to be sometimes when you least expect it. Like there have been episodes that I was like, that was a horrible show that I just recorded for my podcast. And then I'll get like 15 raving emails about it. I'm like, what? You actually enjoyed that? I thought it was terrible, but it hit the right people at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So for you, what are your, so again, like me, I kind of take off by, I don't know, I got 4 more minutes with you. If I always look at, I don't look at like the peak of them or the summit of the mountain. I kind of look at the next spot. I'm like, where can I get the next guy? Where can I get the next guy? But way off at the height, there's obviously like, man, I'd love to talk to Joe Rogan or Elon Musk. What are your for someone like you at your subjective level of success? What are the people that you're looking at and you're like, man, if the stars aligned, that's who I get?
Yeah, I understand you having those kind of stars. It's not in my world. Really? I just don't operate that way. Okay. I'm not saying I have. Like there was definitely my hit list that I wanted in the first couple of years of my show, and I was able to get those people like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk. Yeah. Those are people that made sense for me, for my business, for my niche, for entrepreneurs on fire. Now it's just like I know the right people find my show. Okay. Like I no longer go fishing. I get 400 plus inquiries every single month for people that want to be on the show, that are applying to be on the show. And it's my team's job to whittle down those people who proactively want to be on my show to like, the 15 to 30 that I actually have on my show. So that's where I'm at. It took a while to get here. That was a tipping point that happened, years ago, but it wasn't overnight. Yeah. But that was the process.
What is your goal for like, is there like an abstract, indirect goal? Like for instance, for like what I want to do, it's indirect from podcasts. What I want to do is make as much money as I can throughout my life, and then I want to donate it to MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They do things with PTSD and veterans. Instead of using sertraline and Wellbutrin, they use things like MDMA or psilocybin, and they find it greatly reduces the rate of suicide, of trauma. And as someone that lost a sibling to suicide, that's something that's very important to me. I want to raise as much money make as much money as I can through this podcast, and then fund something like that I know won't get government funding before I die, because I know that's what will leave a better impact on this world. And it's completely, when people ask me, what's your long-term goal with the podcast? I'm like, hear me out. It's a little weird. Do you have something like that where it's like, it's like Elon Musk saying, I'm going to get to Mars, and I'm going to get to Mars by building the best car. Yeah. And there's like, what is it for you? Or do you have one?
Honestly, I just want to say I'm really glad you didn't say that you're going to give any money to your kids. And I hope you don't, if you ever have any, if you have some, whatever it is. I think that's the biggest mistake. Just the worst thing ever. Just like, why don't you just ruin your kids' lives by taking away the one thing that you can give them, which is the opportunity to make it on their own. There's nothing better. And every single parent wants to take that away. Of course, I'm sure as soon as I have a kid, I'll be like, oh my God, here's all the money in the world.
Yeah.
Until then, I'm like, no way, like cut that off. Yeah. Anyways, listen, at the end of the day, I'm also here to like generate a ton of revenue. And I love being philanthropic right now too. Like I've given hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to Pencils of Promise to build schools in developing countries. Like I've gone to the schools, seen them built. I love it. Like I love giving people the gift of education to like a certain level. Like I would never pay, a private college or anything. Like that's just such a money. But like just the, K through 6 or K through 12, these schools where they're actually getting the ability to learn how to read and history and like life skills, like that's a gift. So, continue to do stuff like that. And, I'm sure that as I get a little bit older here, I'm going to, develop other passions that I want to get behind, and I'll do that when the time comes as well. But one thing I will be really disappointed with in myself is if I ever leave any money to my kids.
Well, that's not the best way to end it. That's not. I really hope you don't leave money, but I agree with you, man. If you want to completely screw them over, right? It's
screw them over, man. Give them money, because you're taking away the best gift they have. But before I do let you go, or you do let me go, my friends, get this book. This is the answer to your prayers. This is the 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment, from the blood, sweat, and tears that I spent for you for the last 9 years interviewing the world's most successful entrepreneurs. This book is the roadmap. Get it. 5 bonuses are coming your way. I'm actually going to be shipping, for everybody that pre-orders, I'm shipping to your door all 3 of my journals, the Freedom, Mastery, and Podcast Journal. Just an absolute no-brainer. There's 4 other bonuses. Don't be crazy. Go pre-order right now. UncommonSuccessBook.com. UncommonSuccessBook.com. Look at those guns. I'm impressed, brother. Yeah. I'm out. You're the man.
All right. Thank you so much, John. You have a great one. Take care, buddy.